I'd like to greet anyone who's watching this video, all the plants you are surrounded by, if you are at all, as you watch this video, any animals, the atmosphere, the clouds above you, the sun shining or not shining, or the stars, whether you can see them or not in the building you're in. I call into our communion together during this video all of nature, what you call nature, that surrounds you, that is within you, within your very body, that is largely what you are composed of as a human being. If you're not a human being watching this, if you're a dog watching this, I greet you as well. My name is Jonathan Stone. I live in a parallel world that is only a difference in density away from the parallel world that this channel, Cathee Courter, is living in. We live very close in proximity in terms of geography. We both live very close to a very holy mountain here in Colorado. The mountain is kind of a twin of Long's Peak and Mount Meeker. And so Cathee and I have often compared notes. We've known each other consciously about a year. But we've often compared notes that it seems almost miraculous to me that she has, of course, a lot of the same nature allies I do. And by nature allies, I mean nature spirits that she loves very deeply who have established a very meaningful, deep relationship with her. And they have taught her most of what she knows of shamanism, if not all of it. Most of what she knows of life, they have taught her. She has lived here for about 16 years in these mountains here in Colorado, the Rocky Mountains. I have lived here on the slightly different density that makes me in a slightly different parallel world my whole life. I grew up here at the base of these mountains. And I, too, have learned just about everything I know about life, and certainly about shamanism, as you call it, from many times the exact same nature beings that Cathee loves. And we have found this to be such a bond. I am a teacher, a pretty venerated teacher on my parallel world, and I come from no tradition of, not no tradition, we all come from a culture, so we all come from traditions, but the teachings that I am mainly teaching my students were taught to me by nature spirits, not by human beings. They are not handed down in rituals, that I have learned. There's not like a oral tradition or a written tradition of teachings. I have learned directly from nature myself, as has Cathee. She has studied many, many, many religions, and so have I. I actually am more well-versed in your Bible on my parallel world than anybody I know is, because the Bible is not a well-known document on our parallel world. In fact, we speculate from what we've been able to piece together, Cathee and I, that probably somewhere in the Middle Ages, until then, we're both of Irish ancestry, and until then, we were probably in a very similar parallel worlds. And we had a split off, I think, as far as I've been able to figure out, about when, in your historical timeline of most people I'm talking to, I mean, you never know who may be from a stray different parallel world here watching this, but probably you're from a world where the Christians were the main ones coming from Europe to North America wiping out a lot of the Indians in the name of Christ and settling this world and coming with a real mindset of a human, that the human spirit is closer to God than any nature spirit could be. I know I'm getting, Cathee's going, whoa, Jonathan, I didn't know you were going to like get us into some real, like the touchy subject of our parallel world. But why not hit it directly? And I think on our parallel world, the so-called pagans, the shamans, the nature, the peoples who still spoke to plants and animals and the sky, and derived huge spiritual sustenance from these practices, like indigenous peoples everywhere, have not been arrogant towards everything non-human, like your culture has been. Those were the people who came over from Europe and populated North America and lived peacefully with the native people that were already here. Our population is much smaller than yours, which has, that helped in itself, I know, to have large numbers of people immigrating into this land and living peacefully. But now we are welcoming people from your parallel world to our parallel world. And these, so we're also learning a lot about what it's like to have immigrants pouring in. The size of my area, I mean, I live in a commune that's only usually about 30 people or so in our little spot. But if you look at we have extension commune, you might say, buildings also down on the plains where we can grow food much better than up in the mountains. And that's a bigger settlement. Many communes live there and grow food, and that area has doubled in population in the last couple of years. So we are experiencing a huge influx of immigrants from your parallel worlds and related parallel worlds that are similar to yours probably. And these people are leaving a world where, as far as I can ascertain, I think the biggest problem that has led to the ecological destruction of your world, which is, near terminal for many of the worlds that in your cluster of worlds, really comes back to an inability to recognize spirit in all things, to recognize that this plant is as close to God as I am, is whatever God is, in its expression, and that I can have a very loving, fulfilling, relationship with this plant that's as fulfilling and conscious and intelligent of an exchange as I can have with Peter, the man behind the camera there. This is a fern. We chose to have a fern in this video because up behind Cathee's house here, ferns grow naturally along the river. This one probably came from a store, but she's not in the practice of transplanting plants from outside and our houses are full of plants year round. And the same plants that we love in the summer, we often bring inside. Like my house is full of daisies in the winter. So I figure, as I watch the immigrants pour into my parallel world and my community, my homeland, we have tried to, teach people, since we grow all of our own food, there's not much that you can buy around, especially now that we've doubled in population. Food is pretty scarce. This year, for the first time I ever remember having to kind of watch it, how much we eat, because there's twice as many mouths to feed. So we've been trying very much to teach the immigrants coming in how to garden and farm in our climate here, and with our attitudes towards nature. Our yields, if you use so technical a term as a yield, our yields far surpass yours. The quality of our food nourishes our body so much more than your food does. I mean, I'm basing this on knowing Cathee intimately and watching her and comparing notes of how things are done and where your food comes from, and also extensive conversations with the immigrants themselves, the Leapees, who have come. So I told Cathee, could I do a video on YouTube and get it out to the world here on the crux of the matter of teaching your people how to relate to nature beings directly. Whether they then will choose to leap to my world or to some other world that skill will be useful on, or whether they will begin to more and more relate to nature beings where they are in your world. I can think of nothing more important for quality of life, for health, for happiness, for love. The attitudes that you have probably learned in your school system, I think and even in some of your religious training. Cathee can quote many parts of the Bible that make her very nervous about the attitudes towards other beings in the Bible. Although Jesus, as far as we can tell, was a great shaman. He was able to still the sea when a big storm came up when he was on the boat. He was able to take loaves of bread and fishes and multiply them so that the crowds were fed and fed and fed. And that is an advanced shaman who can do that. In fact, I don't really see anything that Jesus said that was denigrating to the consciousness in everything. And the way he lived, quite simply, as far as I can tell, as a carpenter, and then teaching on the hillsides, born in a manger, for goodness sakes. This is a man close to the earth and close to sheep. So I feel that the strains, actually, of philosophical thought over the centuries that have led to the idea that, there's spirit, then there's males, then there's females, then there's nature. And, of course, the males are closest to God and spirit, and the females in the earth are almost implied to be of that matter, so-called matter, which, of course, everybody in those systems assumes is something that women in the earth are, not the men, made of bodies, of matter. But the farther you get from spirit into matter, as if there is a difference, the farther you get from God. That's the basic philosophical framework. I think a lot of the ideas that are still very, very widespread in your culture were based on. And actually that really isn't in the Bible. And of course it was promulgated by white men, because the people of color of either gender, of course, are or lower on the scale. It's a kind of, a lot of people, of course, say that's patriarchal notion. But nonetheless, it's widespread on your culture. So, to counteract hundreds of years of your learning, I'd like to start in this video with some very basic exercises and ideas of how to, snuggle up to nature and learn to feel the world differently, learn to see the world differently, come back home to the rest of us. In my theology, and I think the theology of many people who are into metaphysics, you can talk about a higher dimensional reality, and that's what we call the world of spirit. And then as things come down in density into form, into matter, even as far down as a rock, that's pretty solid. It's a difference in density, but spirit is still in this rock. It's just expressed in a world that we all live in. Whether, if you are embodied, you're living in a world where time moves very slowly, it seems. Changes happened for this rock over, I'm not a geologist like Peter is behind the camera. Here, he is a geologist formally, and I don't know, Peter, how many millions or billions of years has this piece of quartz probably that we pulled out of the backyard here probably been known as billions of years has been a piece of quartz. Of course, it was molten in its formation. There's a little lichen that's probably very old as well. Lichen. So what does it mean? Are you as a spirit, a human spirit, if I'm talking to humans mainly, probably the dogs that were kind of watching this video have probably lost interest by now, but this rock, what separates it from you in its basic spirituality, its ability to interact with those people and things around it? Is there really a difference between the spirit of a rock and the spirit of a human? So, if you wish to follow along with me, we're going to basically work with someone in your environment that you may feel is dear and want to get to know better. You may have a house plant that you'd like to grab right now, sit by, or bring to you. You may have a favorite rock. You may have a cat. And we'll work. And I will admit, I'm a little nervous doing this video because I was actually, I've been quite a teacher to Cathee this year, for about a year, since she leapt off a parallel self who was living in my home for several weeks, and I hosted. I learned a lot about your culture from Cathee's parallel self, Leanie. But I've also been in close contact with Cathee telepathically for almost a year now, or actually more than a year, about a year and a quarter now. And so I can very easily read Cathee's mind and see what's in her brain. She's had theological training as well. And then I think I know what your culture's like when I read her brain. And then I realize Cathee's not like a normal Westerner because she's been living on the mountain and listening to the mountain that I love too. So we'll try to work with this. How can I teach this? But she had to learn from the land, so we'll too. So it's doable with anyone. So when I pick up this rock, I'm kind of thinking out loud. How do I see it, and how would you see it? You see it as something that the people that built this house probably threw it aside. They probably dug out the foundation for the basement, and this was in the way, So that's, they probably brought in concrete from who knows where, made of, some kind of aggregate of pebbles and sand and other minerals, and put them together, but not from here. Now, the land Cathee happens to live on is granite underneath quite a bit of soil. And the granite releases a gas called radon that in your culture is considered very radioactive. Quite a health hazard. And in fact, she's been told that, it's equivalent to live in this house of smoking, however many packs of cigarettes a day, as far as your lung health goes. Radon happens to be one of my close allies. I have many allies that you may consider unusual. I know in your culture it's considered cool to have the predators as your totem animals. Cathee tells me hardly anybody wants to get close to ant or mouse, and yet everything is alive, and everything can commune with you and enrich your life in a very special way. Radon, for me, is kind of a similar idea to how actually your scientists see it, that radioactivity causes mutations, right, of the genes, and this can lead to damage of the chromosomes of your genetic makeup, which can lead to cancer. That's like proliferation of cells that, takes off. But it can also lead to a mutation in a positive direction that can lead to changes in your body that allow you to be able to process frequencies, very high frequencies, and for you to evolve, essentially, as a human being. If the mutations go in the direction you want them to go. So even though this house, according to your scientists, for Cathee and Peter to live in it, is, I think the last time she tested it was, and they have done some steps since they tested to make it less full of radon. But at that time, it was 2.5 packs of cigarettes a day that this house tested as the equivalent health damage in your studies of, epidemiological studies of populations. That would be the equivalent in damage to the body. And I hear things like that, and I think, and I tell Cathee, well, that's among people who don't have a relationship with radon. Then yes, you better move. But why did Spirit bring you here to this house? And yes, I do think the radon is much more damaging in this house than it would be if Cathee lived in a granite cave, because the basement is made of concrete with which she does not have a direct relationship. And this concrete, the constituents come from places that she doesn't even know of. She doesn't know where the sand in the concrete or the pebbles or whatever, what quarry did those come from? What place? And so she is trying to, in her very body, adjust. Her body is trying to adjust to living in very close proximity to concrete that it doesn't have, the surrounding landscape does not have a relationship with. She's very close, she feels very close to the land she lives on. There's national forest, maybe 100 yards up the hill here, and kind of a steep rise up to the top of a mountain that is not snow-capped, is below timberline, but nonetheless a mountain with a big view looking over the whole plains, Boulder, Denver area, if you get to the top. And she's very close to the land here. The land truly loves her, she feels. The forest, the wildflowers out back in the yard. She has many stories to tell of almost miraculously wildflowers that she is close to appearing in her backyard, even though none of the neighbors have them, that kind, in their yard, and they have come as she has gotten close to these flowers, up in the national park usually. They start appearing in her yard, and she doesn't bring the seeds down, intentionally anyway. She feels like the land loves her, but here she's living in a house with a concrete foundation that did not come from this land, as far as we know, or anywhere near here. May be mixed together with, in such a way that the constituents of the concrete are not loved and honored. Nature was probably not consulted in how to mix that concrete. And I'm not saying that mixing rocks into concrete is a bad thing if you do it, if you ask the rocks what needs to happen in connection with your consciousness. And I'm not saying that bringing in rocks from a distance is a bad thing to build a house foundation. We do it, but we go and we hand select the rocks, even at a distance, and we bring them home knowing that they resonate with us and that our body has a relationship with them that works. So she has been struggling in this house, taking cultural ideas that radon is bad, that concrete is concrete, no matter what it's made of, it's the same anywhere. She has been living in this house, even though the direction the house faces is not very well situated according to the energy flows of the land and so forth. Some of the basic feng shui or geomancy problems, she has dealt with from that standpoint of the feng shui is kind of an ancient Chinese way of relating to the land according to certain principles, mental principles. And, geomancy, I suppose, would be considered from European traditions, like the people that built Stonehenge in Great Britain were probably geomancers, if we use that word. Of course, every culture has its way of relating to the land. These are traditions that got systemized and are meaningful, as long as you realize that when it comes down to it, your body is relating to your land. It's not an intellectual thing. And you need to be able to, I think, come from a place if you want to really have a meaningful relationship with your land. Is to have a meaningful relationship with your land. I'm kind of giving this talk with, I'm kind of, talking, you're kind of seeing the result of a dialogue between me and Cathee here. I'm picking her brain. We've had so many talks about her work in working with people's homes. She's a geomancer herself, and as well as a channeler, and Peter is too. Peter's also a general contractor, or has been, and so they've been struggling with this, how in this society can you connect people to their own land and their own homes in a meaningful way. And they have studied many intellectual traditions, but when it comes down to it, a lot of these intellectual traditions of technique come out of cultures where people probably naturally could sense since they didn't have computers and they didn't spend most of their time indoors, dealing with virtual reality, you might call it, watching TV, chatting on the internet, they were actually in physical proximity to the people they were talking to, probably most, and they were in physical proximity to space even. They weren't looking at movie sets, but if they saw a home, it was probably because they were physically there. Now, these traditions, how can we bring a sense of relationship to land and to the spirit in all things, to your culture? It's a very big question. So I'm going to try to help here. But I would really suggest that, and I know there's a lot of teachers of shamanism, and many of them are very good, even in your culture. But it comes down, I think, to the basic, philosophical ways of thinking. Is there spirit in this rock or not? Can you have a relationship with this rock? And is your body something objective? Is it an object? Or does it have a native intelligence itself that, like Cathee's hands are experiencing this rock in this moment in a way that her brain, in its ability to conceptualize reality, probably can't conceptualize. There's something else going on. And I feel that it's vitally important to develop that other sense, that other way of relating that's not just intellectual. I live, where our commune is, the upper commune, where we grow food even in the winter, some around, within the house and in the greenhouses, but certainly in the summer as well. We have, we're at, I think by your standards, probably we'd say about 9,000 feet, maybe a little bit higher. And it's on Cathee's parallel, it's a very mountainous area. We're looking up the Whitecap Mountains, pine trees, aspen trees, and low-lying shrubs. Not very lush, really. A lot of, the Indians in her history were nomads that would pass through, but they didn't try to grow, gather enough food there to live very long. And most people, Cathee knows a lot about edible foods, and she doesn't think she'd be able to live up in the national park just eating, or national forest around here, let's say, just eating what she could. But on our parallel, we have lush orchards along the little streams. that are very high mountainous country. We, in the valley here, on the plains, around the area of Boulder and Longmont, cities that are connected to Nebraska, Iowa, the breadbasket, but a little higher. I think Denver is 5,000 some feet in altitude. We grow amazing food that is so different than yours, I'm almost sure. Because we talk to the plants, because we love the plants, and the plants that are growing have a relationship with us. And when I say with us, I mean with our bodies and with our spirits, as well as with our intellects. And they accommodate us, and we accommodate them. We follow their instructions very carefully of how they want to be grown. But it goes beyond even that prosaic, how much water would you like? How often would you like to be watered? We have a real sense that the food we eat becomes us. And then, of course, we give back from the other end, and we give back that compost. And the food and the plants eat us. We are very aware that, I am not a singular, separate being. I am composed of the land, because everything I eat is generally, unless someone brings a gift from far away of food, is grown right here, right where I live. And what I give back to the land, I can't imagine, for instance, flushing bathroom cleaner down the toilet and poisoning the land I live on. This makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me. Of course, the plants here are going to eat me, what comes out of my body, and then I am going to eat them. And so that bathroom toilet cleaner is not going to disappear. I'm going to eat it. That's on a real, obvious, mundane, common sense level. But what happens as I become an onion? I eat an onion. The onions we grow in our greenhouse in the valley, about that big. Average onions. And my relationship with onion, of course, has grown so close over the years that onion will tell me to eat it at times when it knows that I need to connect. I kid you not, when I need to connect to certain star systems and the frequencies coming in from outer space, and I'm having trouble connecting with them, onion will say, look, if you eat me, I will help your body readjust to be able to take in these incoming frequencies and let them nurture this body. And when you take them in, and those incoming frequency waves from outer space become a part of your body because they have vibrated you, all matter is really energy, that, your scientists know that. You are ingesting those frequencies because they are vibrating your body, and things are rearranging as they vibrate you. An onion can help my body readjust to these incoming frequencies. So I have a very close relationship with onion. And I give my love to onion. Onion feels that she has evolved in her consciousness as well because of our very deep friendship. She has learned to read me in more of a way that she can communicate with me. And you might call it more of ability to use actually even language and more of a sense of objectivity, to be able to stand apart from me enough to read what my body needs and do that, so that she actually, it's not always me saying, well, Onion, what do you think I need? She will come to me in my meditations and say, knock on the door, and say, I can tell, Jonathan, that you are not really assimilating these cosmic energies that well. I really think you need me, and I know exactly what I want to kind of help, shift in your frequency through you ingesting me. Usually it's through me. I usually eat the onion when she suggests helping me, that I come to her for help. So this is a very intimate relationship we have, and it's relationship, and it goes again far beyond me telling Onion, look, how can I grow you better? Do you need more fertilizer? It's more of, I know that if I ingest this onion and it in itself resonates me as I digest it, it becomes the energy of my body, as well as the substance of my body, as well as the consciousness of my body. And as that happens, then, as Onion, I'm speaking, I guess, pretty plainly here, but as Onion comes through my body and out the other end, and she then takes on qualities from me. And so okay, Cathee, what word is shit the word that people usually use, or excrement, is that too formal, or whatever we want to deal with? Okay, the shit that comes out of my body, the end result of digestion. Now, that is onion. Let's say for a whole day I eat nothing but onions, okay? So, a day later or so, that's going to be onion. Onion after onion has been through the system and has taken on my consciousness, something of my consciousness. It's obviously been through my body and interacting with the cells of my body as it goes through the whole system of, the intestines and even, on a cellular level into the bloodstream. Different parts of onion will have different journeys, different minerals that it's composed of, etc. But these minerals and biological matter that compose the onion were put together in a certain way that became an onion. And so onion's consciousness is all through that arrangement. And then when onion comes through my body, the onion is coming and interacting with cells that, yes, were built from other plants in my body, or I'm a vegetarian, so it's other plants. But according these, my cells were arranged according to my consciousness and my body's consciousness. So she's run through my consciousness in her very cellular experience as she goes through my body. And so the shit that comes out is not an onion, and not just the remains of an onion. That shit has been a transformed onion, and in a process that I think is like one of the most intimate relationships you will ever have with anyone. It is the substance of me, but it's also the substance of her and the substance of everything she ate in her growth, brought up through her roots and her bulb. And so every meal I eat, it's a feast of relationship. with beings that I love so much and who are in great communion with me as I put them in my mouth, or as I even prepare them to eat them if I cook them, or otherwise. We do a lot of fermentation, a lot of kind of salady raw food, fermented raw food as well. But we do cook quite a bit. And it's all the sweetest intimacy imaginable. And it's our food is so alive. It's so energized with the consciousness of what it is, and it's so nurturing. It's so nurturing. And we know that this food loves to be eaten by us. It gets to merge with us, and we get to merge with it. And someday, yes, I will be planted in the ground when I'm dead, and it will eat me. But I see that as different. I think when I will die, the consciousness of who I am that holds this body together in a certain way will be releasing. And so the minerals will be available and everything. But I feel like my shit is really special because it still holds a lot of the energy blueprint of my body. And yes, it also is dying and is, you could say, is letting go of that blueprint, just like my dead body will someday let go of it. So in a way, it's similar, I suppose. But I get to enjoy putting that compost in the garden while I'm alive. And as I do that, I really think of it as that onion is sitting at its dinner table, and just like I eat it, it's going to eat me. Or at least something that came from me. And it thrills me to have that relationship. Likewise, when I get dressed in the morning, pull off the pajamas and decide, what am I going to wear? There are certain clothes that are very suitable for what my body needs that day. Let's say I've been through a lot of stressful experiences and I'm kind of low energy, a little bit depressed maybe, which doesn't happen very often at all. It's been a stressful year actually, helping all the leapies come in and try to teach them these principles. To tell you the truth, I think I used to be a jolly man all the time, and now it's like, okay, how can I explain to them the magic of our life? The magic. I think those who get it, who have come over, see our world is just enchanted because everything is alive and everything is loving, it seems like. And so it's been a little stressful to have people around who don't see the world that way. For the first time, I really remember being around very many people who don't share the excitement of living in an enchanted world where everything is alive and beautiful. So I've been a little more stressed out, and I find myself reaching for certain clothes that I have a relationship with. And these clothes have let me know that they have the potential to kind of give me a lift and hold me energetically as I wear them. Now, I will say that I think our world is a little higher in dimension than yours is. when I look at anybody, I see their body, but I also see their aura quite clearly. And I think everybody on my parallel who was born here sees auras. And so I might, like right now, I'm looking at Peter behind the camera. And, Cathee is just seeing his body. And I'm seeing a lot about how he's feeling. I see even some of his purpose in life. I see who he's closest to in terms of relationships. That's all in his aura. And I'm kind of in my astral body now, kind of co-inhabiting Cathee's body a little bit, enough that I can see out through the eyes. But I'm also outside of her body looking directly at Peter. So I'm looking at his astral body, in other words, as we look. But on my parallel, I'll see both. So it may be really quite a bit easier for me to tune into the spirit of onion, to tune in to the spirit of the trousers I put on. But again, this is where I get confused, because Cathee has such a fine sense of feeling these things and talking to the plants. And I forget that she's kind of a freak on your parallel world, because her parallel self that leapt to my parallel world went through a great transformation in every cell of her body to be remade so that she would resonate with our parallel world at that frequency. And so I get to know Cathee's parallel self, Leanie. Cathee is, her name is Kathleen, so we call her Cathee, and herself Leanie. And I forget that since Cathee can speak telepathically to both of us, I sometimes forget that your world is really a lower dimensional reality, probably. Nonetheless, I think it's still very relevant for all of you who can to learn to at least conceptualize that there is life in everything, even if it may take a while of intention. With your intention, I'm sure that you can also begin to feel the other levels of life and things, of consciousness and things. I have no doubt everyone watching this video can learn to do that. And in future videos, we may lead you step by step in exercises to do that. But I think to even have the concept that of what you're missing out on, I hope will motivate you to want to experience it. Because what's happening in your world, as far as I can tell, is, there's a spiritual level of anything, like onion, which is a higher dimensional level. You call it a nature spirit. And then there's the onion, physical onion. And through genetic engineering, you're changing the physical expression of the spiritual, the spiritual embodiment of the spirit, onion spirit, and you're changing it without communicating with the spirit of onion, and you're making it something that is lifeless, because you're cutting it off from its spiritual roots. Then you eat that onion, and it doesn't give you nearly the sustenance and the nurturing that an onion that still has its spirit intact gives you. Now, we're working with another parallel world than the one Cathee's on, and I hope that these videos are actually reaching even that parallel world. We've had feedback that some of our videos are able to reach some of the people in these other parallel worlds. And one of the main ones I know we keep mentioning is the parallel world that John Kennedy Jr. was president of in the United States. And on that parallel world, we call him Johnny to distinguish him from the John Kennedy Jr. on Cathee's world, who didn't become president, who became editor-in-chief of a political magazine that he started. But Johnny, the President Johnny, President John, as they like to call him. On that world, his spirit was separated from his body and possessed by an impersonator who wanted to make the presidential decisions with Johnny's spirit out of the way. In that experience, it is not that different than what your genetic engineers are doing to many, many species of plants. Now, if you think of it as a human being, his spirit was cut off from his physical expression, and his impersonator had to really be good at impersonating to pull it off, and I don't think he could have pulled it off for very long. But I think most humans would consider that very tragic, that could ever happen, that's even possible, that a culture could be that degraded, that it divides people from their souls. And this happened to many people in his culture, people in positions of power. On the parallel world where Cathee lives, though, a majority, from what she tells me, of the corn and the soy and wheat, this has happened to. So I have to admit, it blows my mind that you are eating dead, soulless food. I can't imagine what that does to you. Now, I know there's been studies on, and they have shown that what it does to your body on a scientific measurable level is pretty scary. And of course, nobody knows the implications for the future. If you have a drought and the few strains of, genetically modified corn that everybody's planting are not drought resistant, you could have a total failure of the corn crop. Things like that. I know you approach it scientifically of why this is not good. Although politically, you don't seem to be able to restrain these companies from making your food supply an abomination of what food could be. But I'm saying that even on the level of what it means to eat, what it means to ingest food, and have it become you, and you become it, and you give back, and that whole love fest, that whole sweet, sweet relationship. I mean, even to sit beside this lovely fern, there's so much happening between us, between our bodies, even if I'm not intellectually even thinking about fern. And even more so if I were to eat fern. The interaction, to think of that having been destroyed, the capacity for that kind of relationship to happen. That would take, if that were to happen on my parallel, it would take so much of the joy of living away right there. It would just, I can't even imagine living in a dead world like that. So I don't mean to be judgmental here, but I want to tell you, you are missing out on so much joy. Even if we just talk about food or clothing. So I feel like I want to wrap it up here for today. And, I would love to do some future videos where we really start to work with, if you can find any live food, hopefully some organic food may help, or some, somebody like this rock that you really love, that you'd like to get closer to. Maybe we can help increase your relationship with it, and work with that. So I really applaud if you have sat through this video this long and are sensing an inner longing to live in a live world. I really applaud you wholeheartedly, sincerely, for staying alive spiritually. I would say against all odds in your cultures. And that gives me hope for the world. As part of our LEAP movement, part of the deal is that people that are coming from cultures that have tried strange experiments, like killing the spirit in their food, in the name of, intellectual objectivity, scientific method, etc., which I think is kind of baloney, because I feel like we have as much science as you do, but we're smart enough to include the nature spirits as part of the team of experimentation. But anyway, soulless scientific exploration. This was, we believe, a direction mass consciousness decided to go. And there were safeguards built in that. My soul family is comprised of both nature spirits and human beings. And one of the safeguards was that our soul family would be very involved in these worlds. And if things got too destructive, since exploring destruction was not really one of our soul family's goals, we would pull our members out. And so that's what we're doing. We're leaping them to cultures like mine that are not insane. But the part of what is very beautiful and very exciting in my culture as the leapies arrive is that we get to see what did humanity learn by exploring this extreme scientific objective mythology, I would call it. I mean, you can never be separate enough from anything to be totally objective. There is no such thing as total objectivity, and even your scientists, theories of relativity have figured that out. But I think the general popular mindset, though, is that there is such a thing as objectivity and truth with a capital T, or your court systems would have nothing to go on, without that mythology. People would just have to learn to relate to each other and get along, and stop poisoning the earth with all these rationalizations that, that defy common sense. I think that's what your scientific objectivity. One of the things it has given you is the ability to defy common sense. But there are real gifts that have come from this, and even the nature beings. Say, well, they have developed some new qualities in relating to humans that are embroiled in that mythology. So it's kind of exciting to greet the leapies and have everyone sit around now and say, what did I learn from eating dead food? How am I different from the people here who were eating live food? And did I develop qualities in myself as a result of this that are kind of a new experiment, a new frontier in what it means to be human? And there have been many gifts that have come from this exploration. So it's not all bad, but I think if you are wishing to stay on the parallel world you're on, if I'm reaching you through a camera, you're probably on a world that's taken technology too far. And this sense of objectivity and separateness instead of relationship with everything. If you wish to survive, if you wish to help your culture to survive, I really believe deep in my heart, and I've had a lot of experience of talking to thousands of leapies actually, that this basic concept that humans are close to God and are spiritual beings and everybody else is not, I do not see how your culture can survive with that mindset. It will not survive with that mindset. It's a strange belief. So I really applaud you if you have made it this far in this video, I would hope that something is stirring in you and that you might be one of the ones to carry forward into your culture really deeply felt sense of the consciousness in everything. So I applaud you, I admire you for staying alive in a culture like that. And I don't speak for myself only when I say there are so many people and other beings who want to help you any way we can to bring more life to your pocket of the universe. So I thank you, I greet you, and I send you love.